So one of the biggest dividing lines, we could call it, between the American left and right is about what role should government have in our lives? How big should government be? What are the things that government should and shouldn't be doing? And the public policy mood estimate is a measure of exactly that. And it is at the most liberal point in the 68-year history of the measure. And it's really important to understand that this measure doesn't address the public's view on a lot of the issues that have been big parts of the Donald Trump administration. So immigration is not addressed by the public policy mood report. Trade is not in any way addressed by this. It's specifically related to the role and scope of government in society. And I have to tell you, the results are not actually very surprising, because when we look at individual issue polls where people are asked, should the government provide a basic level of health care to everybody, regardless of whether they can pay for it? The country is the most to the left that it has been on that issue. People, by and large, thinking the answer is yes, the government should provide some basic level of care to everybody, even if they can't pay for it. And part of the reason why is that whether your sympathies to that idea are ideological or moral or economic, we now realize that, hey, we're a well-rich enough country that we can be making sure everybody has a basic level of care. And it's also good economically, because when people have access to health care, all sorts of other negative externalities are mitigated, like work absenteeism and productivity, if that is what you care about, or criminality related to needing money to pay for medical treatments, medical bankruptcies, all of that stuff. Whatever your sympathies are with regard to healthcare, more and more of the country now recognizes everybody's better off if the government does something that we can very easily afford to do, which is make sure everybody has some basic level of care. On the issue of taxation, should the government be using taxation to reduce income inequality by taxing the very, very rich? The country has moved to the left on that. It has been a significant and steady move to the left. Now, I know that there are still people who don't want the rich to be taxed. I know there are still people who believe that it's not good economically to tax the very, very rich, to lift the bottom end and make sure nobody gets left behind. You can find those people. Many of them voted for Trump. But in total, the country has moved to the left in terms of believing that that is a role that government should be playing. This is why Republicans don't want people to vote. When you understand and recognize that on the issues, the country is well to the left of our elected officials, you don't want people to vote. The ideas that people have come around to, and this is bigger than Trump, are more or less the ideas of Franklin D. Roosevelt's Second Bill of Rights. FDR proposed this during his 1944 State of the Union address. The elements of it were employment, a Bill of Rights that contains employment, meaning the right to work, food, clothing, and leisure with enough income to support those activities. A farmer's right to a fair income. This was very important in the US at the time. Freedom from unfair competition and monopolies. Elizabeth Warren is talking about this. Housing, medical care, social security, and education. This is from 1944. I would add to the Second Bill of Rights now, protecting the environment in the context of the climate crisis that we're facing. But this is all about government's role. And on government's role in total, the country is as left as it has ever been. So if we fix our election system, we might actually have a shot at making more of these things a reality, because the most liberal public mood ever is not going to get progressive politicians elected if we don't fix campaign finance, if we don't fix the election systems, if we don't stop voter suppression. This does also relate, by the way, to my story yesterday, pointing out that Donald Trump is mostly the result of decades of right-wing anti-intellectualism and demonization of progressive ideas. But Donald Trump's rise to power is also partially a result of milquetoast, centrist, status quo ideas from corporate Democrats for much of that same multi-decade period. So all these issues with campaign finance and voting systems do need to be fixed, but Democrats also need to get with it and move to the left, as some Democratic candidates for 2020 are finally starting to do, as some members of the Progressive House Caucus are finally starting to do. There's plenty of blame to go around. It's not everybody is equally to blame. But when you understand that on the issues the American public has moved to the left, it immediately becomes obvious why Republicans have been behaving the way they've been behaving when it comes to who is allowed to vote, what is required to vote, what are the number of places that people are allowed to vote, and why do they want to reduce that? And they have sporadically gone public and made it clear. Remember that guy, I think his name was Mike Turzai, who said voter ID will deliver Pennsylvania to Mitt Romney. They understand this, okay? They're willing to play dirty, and to a great extent, they have secured numerous, endless election victories as a result of their willingness to do it. Do Democrats need to stoop to the same level? Well, it's not stooping when you try to get more people to vote, okay? That's called the spirit of democracy, and we need to understand all of these elements. It's fantastic that the country is moving left. We just need to make it possible for that leftward move to be reflected in the elected officials that we put into power. And voter suppression, voter ID, reducing voting hours, reducing polling places, all of that is going to make it harder for the will of the people, which is more left than ever, to actually be made a reality.